Imagine being told that your only purpose in life, your only value, is to create more human beings. Not for love, not for family, but as property, as livestock. This is the true story of a man whose body was not his own, a man forced to father over 200 children. His name was Parasaka, and this is his story. In January of 1808, something monumental shifted in the history of the United States and the Caribbean. The doors of the transatlantic slave trade slammed shut. No more ships loaded with captured Africans would arrive on these shores. But here's the thing, the demand for labor didn't stop. In fact, it exploded. Cotton, sugarcane, and rice plantations were spreading like wildfire across the American South and the Caribbean islands. The cotton gin had changed everything. Suddenly, short staple cotton could be grown almost anywhere, and it was incredibly profitable. The Deep South was becoming an economic powerhouse, and at the very center of that power sat the enslaved men, women, and children whose unpaid labor made it all possible. But with the slave trade ended and mortality rates among enslaved workers devastatingly high due to the brutal conditions they endured, something had to change. The supply of enslaved people was running dangerously low, and the slaveholders needed a solution fast. What came next was perhaps one of the most sinister developments in an already horrific system. When you view human beings as nothing more than cattle, your solutions reflect that mindset. Slave owners turned their attention to the wombs of enslaved women. They began to see fertility as productivity. They started talking about breeders and breeding periods. They spoke of women being too old to breed as casually as if they were discussing farm animals. This was the birth of systematic slave breeding in the Americas. And within this dark chapter of history emerges the legend of one man, Parasaka. Let me be clear from the start. Historical records about Pataseka are fragmented. Stories about him have grown over time, with some claiming he lived 10 lifetimes, others saying he was somehow protected from the worst horrors of slavery. But we know enough to piece together a remarkable and troubling story. We know enough to visit one of the strangest and most painful chapters in human history. Before we go back in time, please take a moment to hit that like button and subscribe. These are the stories that need to be told, the real narratives of Black history that don't always make it into the textbooks. So here's how breeding worked. Slaveholders wanted the strongest, most resilient workers on their plantations. They began applying a crude form of natural selection to human beings. They would look at enslaved men and assess them the way you might assess a stallion. Who was tall, who was muscular, who seemed to have endurance. These men were then systematically paired with enslaved women to produce children who would inherit these physical traits. The thinking was simple and monstrous. Strong parents would produce strong children, and those children would become valuable assets who could endure back-breaking labor and turn a profit for their owners. Some slave owners even looked for specific physical features they believed would increase market value: fairer skin, certain facial structures. It was eugenics before eugenics had a name, driven entirely by greed and built on a foundation of racist ideology that denied the very humanity of those being bought and sold. It was during this terrible time that the legend of Parasaka would unfold. His real name was Roque José Florêncio. He was an enslaved African man in Brazil, and his life was defined by a terrible purpose. He was purchased specifically to breed. His nickname, Pataseka, which means dry paw in English, came from a cruel tradition on the farm where he lived. Enslaved people were given animal names, and because of his extraordinary height, he stood an incredible 2 meters and 18 centimeters tall, over 7 feet 2 inches, and his thin legs with unusually large hands and feet. Someone decided he looked like he had dry paws. The name stuck. Patasaka was born in Sorocaba, São Paulo. His owner was a farmer named Francisco de Assis Bueno. And here's where his story takes an unexpected turn. Unlike most enslaved men, he did not work in the fields. He didn't live in the slave quarters. His owner trusted him with responsibilities like delivering mail and caring for the farm animals. Every day he would travel on horseback between the rural village and the city of São Carlos. He had a unique position among the enslaved, but that position came with its own terrible burden. Because of his remarkable height, his owner looked at him and saw something else. In Brazil, during slavery, there was a superstition that tall men with slender legs were more likely to father male children. And male children were desperately needed for the fields and livestock. Whether or not his owner truly believed this myth, he decided to exploit it. Parasaka was designated as a slave breeder. His job was to impregnate the enslaved women on the farm. Think about that for a moment. He was examined for diseases, he was well fed, and then, like a prized bull, he was put to work. His descendants today estimate that approximately 30% of the current population in the district of Santa Eudóxia in São Carlos can trace their ancestry directly back to Parasaka. The exact number of women he was forced to be with remains unknown. The frequency of these encounters is lost to history. But estimates suggest that Parasaka fathered over 200 children, and every single one of those children inherited their father's enslaved status. Now, let me pause here, because this is important. While Parasaka himself received relatively better treatment than most enslaved people, his children were not so fortunate. They were treated very poorly. They endured harsh conditions and unimaginable cruelty. Many were forced to work from a young age, performing back-breaking labor on plantations. Some were sold away for profit. Others toiled on their owners' plantations, separated from their mothers and siblings, with no regard for their emotional well-being. These children had no childhood. Their innocence was stolen before it could fully bloom. They were denied education because an educated slave was seen as a threat. They were beaten for the smallest infractions. They were subjected to physical and emotional abuse designed to instill fear and control. And Patasaka, their father, could barely tell which children were his. There were other breeders, too. The children would be put to work once they came of age, just like their parents. They were commodities, property, and families were torn apart regularly, with no thought given to the bonds of love that might have formed between them. This is the haunting reality behind the legend of the man who fathered a village. But Parasaka's story doesn't end there. Because of his success in producing so many offspring for his owner, he did receive some privileges. And when slavery was finally abolished in Brazil in 1888, his former master gave him a plot of land. Now a free man, he found something he had never truly experienced before: love. He married a woman named Palmira. Together, they raised 9 children. On the land he had been given, he built a new life. He became a farmer, working his own land, growing and selling rapadura, a solid form of unrefined cane sugar. His earnings were modest, but they were his. Every coin he earned was earned in freedom. Every meal his family ate was eaten in a home that belonged to them. But here's the tragedy within the triumph. Patasaka could never connect with the hundreds of children he had fathered while enslaved. He had no formal education. He had no access to records. In those days, documentation of enslaved children rarely included the names of their fathers. The search was impossible. Those children, his children, were lost to him forever. Patasaka died on June 13, 1958. He was 130 years old. Let that number sink in for a moment. 130 years. He was born into slavery and lived to see a world where slavery was illegal. He witnessed the abolition of slavery in 1888. He saw the proclamation of the Republic in 1889. He lived through the rise and fall of presidents, through dictatorships, through 2 world wars, through countless social movements. He was a teenager when the American Civil War ended. He was in his 60s when World War I began. He was over 100 years old when World War II ended. He died peacefully in his bed in Santa Eudogia, São Carlos, surrounded by family and friends who honored him with songs and prayers. Thousands of people attended his funeral. Today, a monument stands in his honor in the cemetery where he was buried. When we look at the life of Patasaka, we are forced to confront something deeply uncomfortable. Slavery was not just about forced labor. It was a system designed to perpetuate itself. It was about controlling bodies, yes, but it was also about controlling wombs, about the future. About treating human beings as breeding stock, as nothing more than a means to an end. The men and women who were forced into breeding were not regarded as human beings with rights, feelings, or agency. Their lives were manipulated and controlled. Their bodies were subjected to the whims of their owners. The act of breeding slaves was not born out of compassion or empathy. It was a brutal mechanism to secure a constant supply of laborers, perpetuating a cycle of oppression and exploitation that would echo through generations. But Patasaka's story also contains something else, something that refuses to be extinguished. After decades of having his body used for someone else's profit, after fathering hundreds of children he would never know, after living through the darkest chapters of human history, he found a way to build something of his own. He found love. He built a family. He worked his own land. He lived to be 130 years old. His legacy is complicated. It is painful. It is beautiful and tragic all at once. And it lives on in the thousands of people in Brazil who can trace their ancestry back to a man who was brought to their country in chains. Parasaka's life reminds us that even in the darkest times, the human spirit endures, that people are more than the roles forced upon them, that freedom, when it finally comes, can still be built upon. As always, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel. Share these videos so more people can know the truth about Black history. Not just the pain, but the resilience. Not just the oppression, but the survival. Not just the tragedy, but the triumph. Thanks for watching.